LinkedIn. It's our 10th anniversary as a company, so there's a lot of stuff to pay attention to. Today, we're going to be talking about cyber insurance that complements cybersecurity. There's a lot of conversations going on around cyber insurance. It's a pretty frequent topic at every event that I go to. And last week, I had the unique opportunity to go talk to a group about incident response, which turned into a complete conversation around insurance. So this is very timely. I have two amazing panelists with me today, so let's go ahead and get started. Instead of having them do the normal introduce yourself, tell us how you got into this role, I'm going to ask them to explain a bit about the differences between what they do, between some of the generic terms you might hear. So, Dustin, can you tell us a bit about who you are, and then what is the primary difference between cyber insurance that you purchase from a broker and regular general insurance?
Sure. So Dustin Bullender, two-time MSP owner, actually still own a small law firm focused MSP in Austin, Texas. Founded Beltex Insurance a couple years ago because I got annoyed at insurance, for lack of a better term. And so specifically on cyber versus general, I actually was spending some time this morning working on a claim. Your general liability or business owner's policy is usually focused around physical damage or property damage, bodily injury, stuff like that, versus cyber is going to be that more, electronic, hacking, leak data, things like that. So that was unfortunately somebody is going through that right now, and there's no property damage, so they weren't covered under that policy.
Um, we will talk more about that as we get into the content here. And Spencer, thank you for joining today. It's your first time on the Fireside Chat, so thanks
Yeah,
for
thanks for
joining us.
having me. Of course.
So,
Uh,
breach attorneys, what is their role, and how is it different than the attorney down the street?
it's a great question. So, if you think about a breach counsel, think about the difference between a primary care physician and almost a neurosurgeon, right? Your day-to-day needs, your day-to-day ailments, you go talk to your primary care physician. They're very important, right? That's like a generalist on the legal side. You go to a neurosurgeon, though, when you're having a brain problem, when you need or a brain surgeon, whatever it is. A breach attorney is hyper focused on cybersecurity, right? So they'll handle privacy issues on the front end, but they'll handle a heavy amount of data breaches. So this is what I live and breathe. In terms of the group that I'm with has done about 18,000 breaches. I've done about 1,100. And so why you want to know and meet somebody like me, doesn't have to be me, but someone, similar, is if they're not doing this in their day to day, if they're not really living and breathing it, you're going to be in a bad position because in this world, the things are moving. I mean, everybody on here knows the threats are moving, but a lot of people don't know that the laws, regulations, contractual obligations, reputational harm also is shifting, right? So you need to know someone who's handling this intimately and all the time.
No, I love the medical analogy. It's something people can really understand and make sense if you've ever had to engage those types of services. So we're going to go ahead and start with a poll on what's your biggest challenge when it comes to cyber insurance. So that poll is going to pop up. Go ahead and take that. The goal of today is not to make it through our content outline. We have one, we always do. But today you have two amazing experts who can answer pretty much anything you throw at them around insurance, breach attorneys, the ins and outs, the etiquettes of that. So throw your questions in the Q&A. We will try and keep an eye on chat as well. But traditionally, as we get into insurance topics specifically, it goes a bit crazy. So if you have a really burning question, plug it into Q&A and we'll go ahead and try and get to that. But a big question that I have a lot on site is should MSPs be advising their customers on insurance? Is that a conversation, or should they just hand it off to a broker and stay out of that conversation? Dustin, what's your perspective on that?
So there's actually a Reddit thread on that this morning. So funny timing. So I'd say the advising depends on your definition, but most importantly on that is you absolutely should be talking about it. QBRs are great. There's a whole other discussion we can go in depth on, but short of it is great time to bring that up is in QBRs. Do you have coverage? Okay, help us. Can you give us the policy number, the claims info? Because that helps in the heat of the moment. God knows where your client's going to have put that policy, so it's useful for you to have. But then also knowing what tools are at your disposal whenever there is an incident. And then on top of that as well, there's always the fear. A lot of these carriers are starting to sell cybersecurity services now. Some of them are even starting to sell MDR and security awareness training. So
Mm.
just having that conversation, being proactive, right? All of us as MSPs want to be the trusted advisor. This is one of those things where you can really get a seat at the table quickly and easily by talking to your client about it. Once you get into it, advising the specific policy, two easy rules if you're not licensed: avoid specific numbers and avoid specific carrier names. If you do those two, you're generally extremely safe from the regulatory standpoint. But you definitely want to be talking about, okay, what's the incident response plan? Let's tabletop it. How does your insurance play into that?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think it
Please.
is important that MSPs are talking to clients about insurance because, as Dustin said, the biggest part that I love MSPs for is that they are the trusted advisor, right? All clients look at their MSPs for guidance and help. Now, the specific policy terms, I'd probably be avoiding, right? Because MSPs are not an expert in that. But on a base level, encouraging them to seek out somebody like Dustin, right? Somebody who is an expert on the cyber broking side or cyber agent to help them get a policy, to help them get secured. Because if not, when an incident happens and they have no insurance, there's two things. One, your client might just say to you, "Why didn't you tell us about insurance?" Even though it's not your fault, right? For not telling them, but they might say, "Why didn't you bring this up?" And then the second part is, are any of your costs going to be covered, right? At that point? Are they going to be able to pay you? And even if they have insurance too, talking to them to make sure that you're in that policy. So that if you need to be doing after hours work, that it's not coming out of your clients', pockets. But especially if they don't have insurance, the big question I have for MSPs is how are you going to get paid? Because I guarantee you, they're getting hit with a ransomware attack and they're calling me and I'm going through all the financials that they're going to have to deal with. Unfortunately, you're getting put lower and lower on the list of priorities to pay.
The other part I always say is even if, you can sit there all day, it's a question of when, not if, right? And so you've prepared them, you've done this, that, and the other. Nobody's happy going through a breach or an incident. They're going to be mad at somebody. So from the MSP standpoint, if they don't have insurance, you're having to get in there and do everything. They're going to be really mad at you. On the flip side, if they are bringing in insurance claims team, those people are going to take the lead. Always, the MSP will never take the lead in an insurance claim. But at that point, hey, we're not back up and running. Spencer and the IR people are catching a little bit more heat, and the MSP, you're sitting on, your client side of the table as well. So, and the insurance covers costs, things like that. So it also makes that a smoother, not just from the standpoint of the experts, like Spencer said earlier, right? You're bringing in the surgeons, not the generalists, but from that standpoint of now the client has a bit of a security blanket during that whole process because the specialists are coming in, the costs are being covered, things like that.
And you covered a really solid point. We talked about this a bit in our prep call, the emotion that's happening during the heat of a breach, when it's the client looking at the MSP and going, "What did you do?" And it's like trying to plan for that emotion. Then I can only imagine you've went through that emotional journey and then presenting them with a bill at the end of it for services that weren't covered
This
because
was
they
your
didn't have
fault.
insurance.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you keep that client very well at the end of that
Right.
conversation.
No.
Uh,
And it's
yeah,
getting out in front of things like that. I mean, Becky's a really good point. It's like what I'll tell an MSP is you're either going to be the hero, you're going to be the goat. There's not much in between when you're
Right.
having a breach, because the first thing a client is going to say to me is my MSP at fault, right? And a lot of it comes beforehand with the expectation setting conversations and encouraging them to get the cyber insurance because then they're going to have the financial backing with that to have, protection rather than if you're not there. And then once again, they're going to look at you. I mean, and it's unfortunate because it's not your actual responsibility to encourage them to get cyber insurance and encourage them to, do tabletops or whatnot. But it's more value add because you are the trusted advisor when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to their day to day.
yeah, preparation helps so much. Even in the middle of it, there's going to be those moments of panic, but similar to why we plan for, emergencies like fires and things like that. It's you muscle memory kicks in and you know what to do next. And so talking about that and planning and tabletops, I think really help people be in the right mindset or as close as you can be in the middle of all of it. So we do have a question in the Q&A I think we should jump to really quick before we get back over is What's the typical response from insurance companies paying policies if an MDR like Huntress remediates the threat without contacting insurance first?
I'm going to defer to Spencer on that one because he's way more in the trenches on that side of it than I am.
So the question basically, well, if MDR like Huntress remediates the threat without contacting insurance first. So then the question is, where are the damages flowing from that? Like what, when you say they've remediated, have they basically prevented encryption and prevented exfiltration of data?
Yeah, so I would think like somebody gets a foothold in there. I mean, I've had a couple claims that I've worked where that's been the case, right? Somebody gets in, say through a firewall 0 day, Huntress kicks in, isolates the host, and then at that point, okay, stop. The claim gets open and
Yeah.
starts processing.
So what are you, then who are they paying? Like paying out the client? It depends on the carrier, right? Some they all have you have to inform them, have to get consent before you're doing things. Are they going to be paying you for, kind of stopping the problem through Huntress, or one of your EDR or MDRs? Once again, you have to get that pre-baked into their policies because those are costs that need to be predetermined, not predetermined, but you have to have all the costs that are being expended. Just imagine the insurance company has a vested interest in this with their financials. So they want to know what's being spent so they can approve it beforehand. So if what you're doing is if you're managing the MDR and you've stopped something like this, your cost might not be covered unless you've discussed it with the insurance company. Your client has discussed it with the insurance company beforehand and gotten that baked in. I don't know if I'm answering the question though.
We don't have any follow-up from in the chat from the question asker, so we'll go ahead and I think we can
Tim,
call
if you got
that.
more context on that, definitely drop it in
Yeah,
chat.
please. Tim, yes, you answered it. Cool. We answered the
Awesome.
question.
So I see one real quick. I just wanted to
yes,
touch on
please.
Becky that it's Jared Solomon. So and Spencer, this is I know you have some crazy horror stories on this. One of the biggest challenges I ran into with a full cyber insurance company is they fully take over the process once they're contacted. Um, there's a reason for that. Spencer and I did a panel with Chris Lair recently. Go look him up if you don't know who that is. He runs the incident response for CFC, which is one of the largest cyber insurers in the world. Every time I'm at a conference, I grab a beer with him. And you guys, by being here, are, the top 10% of MSPs. There is a lot of terrible stuff out there. Before I said I was going to let Spencer talk, and then quick horror story. One that I did run into was the MSP said, "Oh, don't open a claim, Mr. Client. We'll take care of it." They restored from backup. Well, ends up then the client got re-encrypted because they had not done enough forensics and they were restored while the attacker was still in the system. So there's a lot of stuff out there like that. And that's why, that from the insurance standpoint, that people like Spencer take over is Chris Lair has said, unless you're doing DFIR day in and day out, you will never be half as good as somebody who does that as their full-time job.
Yeah. And to your question, you're saying, so let's break this up into two parts. Why does the insurance company come in and fully take over? Right? They bring someone like me in, and then I bring somebody like a Chris Lair or any kind of DFIR provider because I want to protect everything under privilege, right? And then there's two reasons for that too. One, the investigation is going to lead to a lot of different forensics, a lot of different conversations. So I want that protected if there's ever litigation. The other part is why I come in and take over is all the regulatory aspects and the contractual aspects. And so the insurance companies have vetted people like me or like Chris Lair or anybody else. So is Dustin, right? To make sure that they're comfortable with me working with their insureds. I'm retained directly by your client, right? By the insured. So I represent your client. I do not represent the insurance company. And I don't get involved in any coverage disputes between that. I'm hyper focused on the data breach and resolving that. The other part you said was you've had a variety of smaller breaches only over time. So what I would say is just to be careful, right? If you've gone from an event to an incident to a full-blown breach, legal term of art. If we're hitting a breach, then we have obligations under the law at that point. Obviously, if you have an event, you haven't hit an incident, so then you don't have any obligations. Even under an incident, though, you could have obligations under contracts or different regulations. So that's why at that point, when they do file a claim and someone like me comes in, that's why we kind of take over too.
And quick thing on that too is I'm trying to go back and forth in chat while you're talking. The forensic side is always one of the big ones that I bring up, right? So like example, healthcare company gets breached. being able to go in and kind of either affirmatively or negatively say, like, patient data was accessed. That's a really important part that an MSP typically isn't going to be able to generate that data, right? From a forensic standpoint.
And there's a couple questions in chat and
Yeah.
in. Do you want to start with Michael's question here?
Yeah, let's start with Michael's there. I think this
Yeah.
is a good, so it's my belief that even the best prepared companies and MSPs will eventually be hit by a security incident. How do you talk realistically to clients about this without them going towards blaming the MSP immediately?
Expectation setting conversations, right? And you're right. No matter how good you are, you could get hit. It's not if, it's when. It just depends on severity. So what I tell MSPs is you need to be prepared, right? You need to show all the due diligence you've done internally. If you don't have an incident response plan, if you haven't done tabletops, if you don't patch, if you don't have air gap backups, it's going to be a hard narrative to put to your clients at that point. Versus if you have these things, then you can kind of explain to them what you've done. Now, if one of your clients has it and they turn around and try to blame you, here's the biggest part. You need to have one, good MSAs, good SOWs, and expectation setting conversations where you're basically saying, this is what we do for you, and this is not what we do for you. We can do this for you, but you have to, pay us to do that. And then let's say you make recommendations like, hey, you need MFA across the board. And they're like, no, we don't. We're not doing it. That's fine. You send them an email and you say, we recommend having MFA. We understand you're not ready to do that. Completely fine. Let us know when you are. So then if something bad happens and they're like, you should have told us that, you can point to that as protection. So the big part to me is expectation setting conversations and obviously having your contracts buttoned up because you're right. One of your clients is going to get hit, or unfortunately, if you get hit. And so you need to have all that pre-baked beforehand. I don't know, Dustin, you have
I,
anything on that?
Yeah, no, the contracts thing I put in chat a minute ago. We regularly have, so Richie is the guy who runs our MSP team. And so we have, folks will call and be like, hey, I need to get my insurance policy. First question on the application is, do you have contracts in place for 100% of clients? If they say no, or, we have people that are like, oh, I don't have that many in place, is I say, don't buy insurance right now. Go get a lawyer. There's Brad Gross, Eric Tilds, there's a bunch of folks in the channel, but the contracts to me are almost more important than the insurance part because that's what changes a breach, an incident from, putting you out of business to, wow, that really sucked, but I survived.
Will client? Yeah, Becky, you
and
want
you
to?
hit on a good point, Spencer. It's not if but when. But at that point, I'm of the belief that we run the risk of becoming the boy who cried wolf. We've been saying it's not if but when forever. It's been 2 years. There's been no when. I like to pivot then to okay, so now we're going to prepare for when. And
Mhm.
that's where the tabletops and having the next layer of the conversation becomes so that you do help. I think human nature is the initial is going to be, what did you do? They're going to blame first, but it's how quickly you can pivot to the next phase of that conversation and get through that initial knee jerk. It's like when you stub your toe and you're mad at the table. It's not the table's fault, but you move on if you can process through it. So probably a horrible analogy, but it's how I think about it. Uh, so we can move on to questions. I think we've answered that. We have another one in Q&A. Will a client be covered if they do not have a WISP for CPAs/tax firms, or if the companies do not have a DR plan written down?
If it's
Yes.
in the applic
Oh, wait, on the insurance side or the legal side? Dustin, you go on the insurance side.
I was going to say on the insurance side, if it's on the application, you answered truthfully, right? Yes or no, they took it at that point. Then that's what they're going to use on guidance. The claims don't really get denied as often as you would think from the news, but that's kind of the general, if it doesn't ask about, there's still a lot of small business policies out there that don't ask about a DR plan. So if they don't ask about it, then no, the expectations are what's in that application and then the policy language also. But, if you were asked about a DR plan and you said, no, we don't have one, then no, they're not going to deny you and say you should have had a DR plan because you answered truthfully on that and told them already you did not.
On the legal side, yes. You could definitely get in trouble. So, well, in Massachusetts, no matter if you're CPA, well, if you're a CPA, tax firm, you need to have WISP, like automatically. But let's just say for you all, MSPs, if you have any clients or employees, individuals past or current, that live in Massachusetts, you also need to have a WISP. Because when we have to go to report to the Massachusetts Attorney General, that's one of the questions they have. And then they'll come back potentially with a question after that being like, well, why didn't they have it? Now, has it escalated into a fine yet for me? Knock on wood. No, but WISPs are easy to put together. And I highly recommend you all getting them. But yeah, a CPA firm and a DR plan, most definitely.
What's a WISP? I
Oh, I'm
don't know
sorry,
what that is
Written
either.
Information Security Program or policy.
Okay. There we go. So I learned a new term. So I'm trying to keep up with the chat. You guys are busy in there today. Let's see. Are you seeing anything you want to cover here?
Oh,
Uh,
here's a good one for Spencer. So this is from Todd. I've been involved in IR situations where the DFIR team asks for things that the customer does not have, logs, documentations, etc. If you could tell every MSP customer one thing they should for sure do before an incident, what would that be? My
have a
answer is
new,
a simple incident response plan. Sorry, go ahead, Spencer.
yeah, look, the baseline incident response plan as baseline. Um, in it, know who you're going to call, right? Once again, you go from an event, you don't need someone like me. You hit an incident, you need someone like me because then we'll get everything under privilege. Um, they need to know who they need to call, right? So Dustin has a hotlines that he can use. He's got partners that he can get you to. Knowing someone like me beforehand, getting me baked in there, knowing what DFIR firm we're going to use, getting them baked in there. On the technical side, you need to have good logs. Like, please God. Like, and for that's on the tech, I try to stay out of the technical lane, but when you don't have good logs and good forensics available, it puts us in a really tough position where we kind of have to start dancing around things. So as an MSP, if you can encourage them to have the right tools in place where it's the log retention, that will make you look like a superstar immediately. And when you get to me at least, and I would be singing your praises to your clients.
The
Um,
technical side of it, and I swear this was not a staged question because you guys are going to laugh at my answer, but I absolutely love seeing MDR in place going into these because that's where, on insurance, everybody says we don't want to pay out claims. That's not true. We don't want to pay out large claims, right? The small ones are awesome because that's what insurance is there for. And it's like, hey, this all worked. I've seen a number of them to where, I mentioned earlier, 0 day comes in through a firewall. Pick your poison of the week, Sonic Wall, FortiGate, all that kind of stuff, right? It's happening all the time. MDR is what takes these, $2 million claims and turns them into $60,000. Like we saw that recently because everything got shut down so quickly. So personally, me, I've loved seeing MDR because at 2 a.m., unless your MSP is huge, most of us are sitting out there with 3, 4, maybe 20, 30 people. You don't have true 24/7 coverage. So having butts in seats like a Huntress kind of thing, that helps reduce the blast radius on a ton of this stuff.
no, that's and for those of you who might not be doing incident response plans with your customers, we do have a template that we built with a couple of insurance folks, and we have a couple of internal people who used to work at IR firms. So we at least have a template for you. We can send it out in the follow-up email to this. It's available on the hub, or shoot me an email and I will send it to you. But that is an easy way to start talking about the not if, but when, here's how we plan for it conversation. So becky.teal@huntress.com, super easy email address. Shoot me a note and I'll get that over to you. We have a few more questions going. So for insurance, and I'm reading this cold, so forgive me if I trip over it. For insurance coverage as an MSP, if you help them fill out the form, but they do not have the security in place and it gets submitted, they'll either approve that or not and just send it back if it is not. Or is the best practice to just implement the fixes you know they need? Now it's a catch-22 with budgets and needs, but from an MSP practice, what would you do, Dustin? I think this leads nicely into the conversation we were having the other day about some of the changes you're seeing in the industry.
Right. So for the filling out part is pick your poison, right? You can just go totally hands off. God knows what the customer is going to submit. The biggest thing is don't sign anything, right? It's a contract between the insurance carrier and the customer. But help them fill out certain controls yourself. There's upsides, downsides to all of them. But if they don't have the security in place and they get it submitted, Is it just implement? If you can get them to pay for it, great. This is Dustin, the MSP owner speaking right now. I'm not doing that stuff for free. Security is expensive and takes a lot of work. So at that point is, we talk to them and I've seen people where it's like they co-managed is the worst at this. If they have an in-house kind of junior help desk person, they check yes to every single thing. You're like, you have no
Mhm.
idea what's going on in your own business, dude. Like, no, we don't have all, when was the last time we did a pen test? It's like, I don't know. I assumed it was being done. So at that point, it's okay, you just represented, material representation is the legal term for it, right? That this stuff is in place. Like, all right, we need to get something done. Here are the costs. The other part, I mentioned that Reddit thread earlier. The other part is you should be putting all this stuff in front of your client regularly. So they should know, again, MDR being one, logs, we talked about SIM earlier. So they should have budget numbers already to where it's like you just signed that you have this stuff. Remember that budget that I showed you? Like, I need you to sign this yesterday now because your insurance carrier thinks that you have it. All this being said, though, is that's where it's, be proactive about the conversation. You should rarely get into that position. If it's happening more than once or twice, that probably means you're not doing a great job with your QBRs, with talking to your clients regularly. But whenever it does, it's like kind of Spencer said earlier, right? It's like I've been recommending this stuff. You already have price, I already gave you budget on it. Sign here because you just told your carrier that you have it in place.
Ooh.
Yeah, I love Todd's. Oh my God, yes, customers lie on their cyber applications all the time.
And people are the adjusters are pulling these applications more and more, and they're checking to see. I mean, look, this goes back to you need to be working with a broker that knows what they're doing. Because I've got a couple right now where literally I don't know what they were filling out, nor do I know why they were filling it out, and the broker has no idea either. Like I'm not kidding. It's like, and the broker, I've had to call the broker and be like, this is going to be a problem, and they're aghast, being like, we didn't know. Well, it's a $3 million loss, so
Yeah.
maybe we should think about it.
Cool. Um, so again, yes, you should fill out the applications with your clients.
No.
And if you're not doing it, I heard it once said if you're not filling it out with them, they're doing it on their own.
Yeah.
So you
And
should,
they're going to put down who knows what. And
yeah.
actually, so we went back to your right, preparing for when, not if. It's doing those applications. Um, Everybody listens to insurance. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but customers are just like, oh, insurance said I need it kind of thing. That is an awesome opportunity to have a conversation. It's a great touch point for your VCIO, as an owner talking to the client, that kind of thing. So I would encourage on that is, you want to be in the room to have that conversation because you're going to talk to your client about security while it's fresh on their mind because they're about to spend, $4,000 on an insurance policy.
Perfect. I'm seeing a couple of things in the chat or in the questions about can I get a copy of the chat? I'm working on that. I'm waiting for somebody in the background to get back to me to find out if we can include that as a part of the follow-up email. So stay tuned on that. Let's see. So whether in Canada or the US, using your example of the refusing MFA, is a letter of declination of services, which looks hostile, a better legal route to protect you, the MSP, or is an email response you described sufficient? So Spencer, back to sending that email piece.
I mean, I always recommend an email. You don't really have a legal obligation to send the declination of services. And I agree that's really harsh. And it just is not business. Like legal and business, they'll never get along. So I guess legally, is it more protection? Sure. But on the business perspective, I would never recommend a client to do that because you're going to lose that client. I think having an email that kind of gently says to them, hey, it's like when I have a conversation with a client and they're saying no. Afterwards, I send them an email and I'm like, hey, here are my recommendations, A, B, and C. You've told me you're not going to do A, B, or C. You're going to go do D. It's your choice, not my recommendation. Like I don't send like a declination of service letter. Um, I think it's very sufficient because once again, if they come back in a year and they got hit because they didn't have MFA, they can't turn around and be like, you didn't recommend this. You can just point to the email and the conversation you've had with them.
Somebody called declination letters or waivers told you so documents that the only time you actually need those is after the incident. It's no, I told you so. The email's the softer version of that that's
Yes.
a little bit less legal feeling.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's under your statement, I mean, even if it's under your statement of work that you were going to implement it, if they decline, it's up to them. And then you just shoot them an email saying, we had this conversation. Hey, great talking to you today. we discussed this. You've declined it. Let me know if that's incorrect. Obviously, the more fuller legal protection, I guess, would be the declination, but I don't really think it's that necessary.
No,
And
that's
another thing
solid.
on that too is make sure it's somewhere that you're going to find it again whenever you need it.
Mhm.
Like if you're a aggressive email inbox clean out, right? Make sure put that in your ticketing system, maybe, I don't, somewhere.
That's why I don't get rid of emails. I keep everything because you never
That's
know
my
when you
excuse
might need
too.
No,
it.
don't do Becky, don't do that. Don't say that to me because God help me. That's every one of my clients does that, and it's always bad when there's an
They're
email.
in folders, but
That does
they're
that even
there.
that doesn't help.
So today I learned that I think I give Spencer heartburn.
You do.
Uh,
You did.
and Tracy is correct. She doesn't even read her emails, so saving them, getting rid of them, it's okay.
Yeah.
I did get confirmation that we can include the copy of the chat in the follow-up email. We'll just remove everybody's names from it just to make sure that it's a little bit of attempt at, cleaning it up. So next question. From your unique perspective, Dustin, owning both an MSP and a cyber insurance company, what's the biggest misconception small businesses have about cyber insurance? You've probably heard a lot of them.
Um, Ooh, okay. I'm gonna try to give two answers, Becky, and you can tell me to stop if I need to. First one though is it's not that expensive. A lot of companies think it's going to be insane. So Beltex, we do almost entirely small businesses, professional services are our focus, but typical MSP client, our average premium so far this year has been under $3,000. That's for $1 million full coverage. Like cyber insurance is not that expensive. And then the second one is the claims being denied, which just drives me nuts. I still run into that almost every week. Easiest one I mentioned earlier, CFC, big cyber insurer. They paid out over 99% of their claims in full last year. Of course, you see the bad. Nobody does a news article on, Spencer and his team worked a claim happily and the client's happy and it paid out in full, right? It's always the bad stuff you see in the news. But the majority of, I've seen two claims denied, even anecdotally, this entire year. So there's
Dustin,
my two answers.
do you want to talk about the hard market versus the soft market? Because
Sure.
I think that's a really
Yes.
good idea. Because remember, like we were talking about this before in like 2019, 2020, how like MSPs were not like they just couldn't get insurance, and that shifted
Yeah.
so much. But yeah, I mean, you're the expert on that, so
Yeah, so insurance nerd term, hard market just means it's expensive, harder to get insurance. So if you think back 21, 22, it's difficult. So I'll give you a comparison. I built three different cyber policies now, kind of designed, and then we go to carriers and we're like, here's what we want to do. Would you back us on it? First one started pitching it in 2022. We met with over 40 different carriers and reinsurers, and we finally got one that was interested. In June, Beltex launched a Tech E&O policy, meaning to cover your MSP full coverage. In 1 week, I had three carriers come to the table with proposals. I'm actually in London right now. Lloyd's of London is right outside my window, like literally across the street. We're standing up a new policy here shortly, I'm hoping. And coming out here was I got three meetings on one day just out of pitching. And one of those guys is going to talk to, I think, six different carriers. So right now we're in the soft market. Everybody wants to give you cyber insurance, your client cyber insurance. Rates have actually gone down. I think we've had one client the entire year on renewals that rates have gone up. If your rates are going up, that means your MSP is growing. Congratulations. Or you need to tell your agent to shop around more. It's a really good time to be a buyer in the cyber insurance space right now.
And is that the same for customer policies as well? Are those rates
Yes,
going down as
even
well?
more so. Yep. I mean, we're
Okay.
seeing not every time, results may vary, but we've seen some that have gone down 10, 20% in some cases, which 2 years ago, that never happened. If you got a 20%
Yeah.
increase, you were happy.
Well, 2 years ago in our masterclass series that we filmed together, we were talking about how it was becoming unaffordable, how
Yeah.
really awesome security practices were the only way to get even relatively affordable rates. You shared something pretty shocking with me about some of the applications and requirements you're seeing.
Oh yeah, it's so the weird part on insurance is so what I would say is the real customer of an insurance carrier is not you, the policyholder, right? It's not, Becky's widgets as a cyber policyholder. The carriers want the agents to sell their policies. So one of those things, going back to Spencer said earlier, right? The majority of agents are not, even the cyber specialists that, it's MRR versus RMM, they can't tell you the difference. The majority of them are not cyber specialists, so they've started dumbing down the applications. 2 years ago, this wasn't the case, but right now, if you came to me and said, Dustin, Becky's widgets, we don't have MFA and I'm not going to turn it on, I can get you a couple of different policy options right now. And the prices are going to be still kind of reasonable. It's going to be a lot more than it would be with actual MFA and real security. But that's sort of where we're at right now is they're trying to make it easier for these agents to sell cyber insurance. All that being said, if anybody wants to guess what we're going to be dealing with in 12 to 18 months from now, I can tell you that rates will, there's consequences for kind of stupid underwriting decisions like that. Rates are going to go up, claims are going to go up, all that bad stuff. So there will be some course correction. But no, right now it's kind of insane to me that um, they're pulling security requirements back on that level.
But to that point, and we talked about this, this is one of the most frustrating. I mean, I know Dustin loves it, right? Because it's easy to get good policies, and I get it from the broking agent side, and this is what I get brokers yelling at me about this. One of the biggest drivers of change for security is not legal, it's not the government, it's insurance. It truly is. Everybody wants to get good insurance. But when insurance is like, you know what? I don't care that you don't have MFA. I don't care that you don't air gap backups. I don't care that you don't have a retention policy. Every time one of these clients get hit with a breach and they come to me, it's just horrific. It's literally horrific. When then, because then a regulator is like, why didn't you have MFA? So what I would encourage is it's go get cyber insurance, right? Leverage the market, as Dustin was saying. Still encourage your clients to do this, please God,
Yeah.
because Dustin will test this. Well, if you have these safeguards beyond the risk mitigation, you're probably going to be in better position to get a better policy. But from my perspective, when your clients get to me, or anybody gets to me, if these things aren't in place, I'm telling you, regulators are getting a lot smarter. I don't know who they're hiring, but they're hiring people who know their stuff. They know their technical sides, and they are drilling us. I mean, we're talking. I got a request from I think Indiana or Washington 2 days ago. It was like 25 questions, and they're highly technical. The NYDFS will dig into everything. And so while I appreciate that insurance has gone to this soft market where everybody can get a policy, we need to get back to them driving
Yeah.
this change and really encouraging people to get in a better position.
No,
Yeah,
that
same. Cybersecurity, Dustin hates it, but it is nice on the side as where we're building policies that there's a lot of carriers that want to work with us. So
Yeah.
So, Dustin, question for you based on a question in here. So there's a question in the chat about our 2FA MDR SIM affecting cost. Where can I start perhaps presenting? Do these costs help drop your cost? So as an MSP, if I wanted to be able to show, here's the policy you qualify for today, and if you
Yep.
add these things, here's the policy you qualify for. Is that where a broker comes in?
depends on the broker. A lot of the underwriting stuff is a bit of a black box. This goes back to, I keep citing this Reddit thread. It's really in my head. But so they may not be able to come in and say, oh, it's going to drop, X%. I can tell you again, having done these policies where, MFA might get you like 5% discount on it. MDR is starting to come up more and more now as they've realized. So you are seeing, I'm not going to name names, but there's one carrier out there that says 15% discount for using their MDR. Well, what they don't tell you is you get like a 10 or a 12% discount for using other people's MDR. So you're starting to see good discounts on that. In the SMB space, the SIM side of it, we're not seeing. Spencer said earlier in claims, SIM is gold, right? That's what Spencer and his team want to see
Yeah.
because that helps a ton. That's not reflected in the pricing yet, but that is starting to come up more and more. But right now, I always joke I'm the smartest cybersecurity guy at the insurance conferences, and that's not a brag on me. That's an insult to the industry. 2023, I remember I showed up to one of the big ones, and the guys were like, "Hey, Dustin, have you heard about this MDR thing? It's about to revolutionize the industry." I was like, my MSP, we started using Huntress back in 2019, so it was like, yeah, I've heard of MDR, but that's kind of the
Wow.
hot thing right now in insurance. But SIM, I think, will be the next year or two. Everybody's starting to realize that the logging, the forensics is that important.
That. So we have one request for the Reddit post. So is it in, if you can find it
Let me see
quickly,
if I can find it.
please put it in the chat because people are dying to continue to read that. So next question in Q&A, and I think this is a really solid one. Zero trust platforms are great for security, but my experience is that they are administratively heavy. Huntress's products and platforms are easier to use for our techs. Do you see a future where insurance companies will require zero trust?
Spencer, you want to?
No, no, that'd be too much. I can see where they require a Huntress. Zero trust, I agree. I love companies with zero trust, but and you get a lot of lawyers out there, especially on the privacy side, like push zero trust and push those kind of requirements, but it's almost like trying to be NIST compliant. It's very, and it gets overwhelming for your regular SMEs, not, yeah, your SMEs out there. So, but I think basic things like having a Huntress, right? I mean, I could sing Huntress's praises all day. I love Huntress. I love a bunch of the other ones too. Don't get me wrong. SentinelOne, CrowdStrike. But no, I think it's too, people wouldn't be able to get policies. And then that everybody would be hurting.
I have a good hot take for you guys. This will be one of those predictions where I'm either going to look like a genius or hopefully everybody forgets that I said it, if not. But in insurance, there's a big concern around like aggregated risk. So that was one of the reasons historically is insurance didn't like MSPs because for an attacker, if we look at like the Buffalo jumps, like that big RMM breach that happened back 2019, right? Why hack a single small business whenever I could breach an MSP and get to 30 of them? So that was like, ooh, that's an aggregated risk. So as insurance, they are talking about zero trust and they're bringing it up and recommending it. With Spencer, I don't think they're going to require it, but at some point, everybody gets breached. One of these zero trust network vendors is going to get breached, and I think you're going to see a big backlash on the insurance side of, oh my gosh, we pushed 1,000 small businesses to this service and then it got breached. That's going to make the industry kind of do a U-turn on saying that's a holy grail from the networking standpoint.
Mhm.
So we are always running out of time on these. We've lost the entire audience now. They're all going to be trolls on Reddit reading the insurance piece. So we've talked about a lot of the stuff in the outline just as we've gone through pieces, but let's do a quick scan here. Let's see, Aaron, this is a question. I've told my techs to avoid talking too much about insurance policies, the impact of different security tools on the premiums, etc., because I don't know the rules of what an MSP can and cannot say without overstepping or assuming liability. Are there some simple do or don't talks about rules? Dustin, I think you covered this earlier when it came to numbers.
Yep. That's the two big pieces. Avoid specific carrier names, which also means applications. There was a vendor that got up. This was like a year ago. One of the talking heads at a vendor, MSP vendor. It wasn't Becky, to be clear, but and they pulled up like a traveler's app and started talking through it, and it was like, no, that's textbook unlicensed education. So the specific apps, that kind of thing, don't talk. You can help them fill it out where they ask you, hey, what's the answer to this? But oh, Beasley, blah blah blah, don't say that. And then numbers as well, right? So how much coverage do we need? I don't know. You can kind of lead them to water of oh, you're a law firm, you bill this much, blah blah blah. But if you stay away from those two, you're generally very safe.
Yeah, I wouldn't give numbers. Definitely not. Because if you give them a number, then they go get it and it's too low of limits, they're going to freak out on you later.
Yep.
So, a ChatGPT question. I use ChatGPT for a lot of things. This is awesome. So, can you speak on ChatGPT, Copilot, or any of the other AI platforms and how these tools have been introducing security terms or concerns, end users uploading private documents into chat in similar situations? How will this drive policy change and how quickly?
Oh, that's a really deep question to finish with 160 seconds.
I know, with 60 seconds left,
How,
not even.
how can I, short answer. Is it going to drive policy change? Yes. ChatGPT scares the living, what out of me. And with clients pushing documents, it's more of the aggregation and where this is getting moved and how it's being used. How quickly is this going to change policy? I don't know. Everybody moves slow on it, but it's just so practical and we love practical things. So shoot me an email after this. I love nerding out about this conversation. So shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you about it. Here, I'll put my email in here.
Perfect. You put your email in the chat. I think some key takeaways today. Dustin, rates are going down. If you're seeing rates going up, talk to a different broker, talk to a broker in general, get all of that reviewed again. Sounds
Or
like
tell your broker,
everybody
give
can
me
get a
more
policy.
quotes.
Yeah, that's and Dustin, will you plug your website into the chat as well so folks can have that? So you've got that information, and then Spencer, expectation setting is really critical to avoid the blame game in the
Mhm.
moment of boom. Planning IR plans. If you don't have those in place for your own business, get one. If you need help with that, we have a template for that as well. But get those plans in place for you and your customers, and then tabletops, practice those so everyone knows what to do, so they're not caught off guard and feeling like you're overstepping by calling insurance, calling in, IR firms and things like that, getting people used to those terms through things like tabletops.
Definitely.
Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Oh, I'm sure
I
we
feel
could go
like we
another 2
covered
hours if
a
you wanted.
lot of ground.
As I
I
say,
know we could talk about this
yeah.
forever.
I feel like the three of us can just keep going for a long time. So
Absolutely. Michael, we will get both of the IR plan templates included in the follow-up email from this. So you'll get those in your inbox. Spencer, Dustin, thank you. Dustin, thank you for joining so late into your evening in London. Especially appreciate that.
I'm going to grab a beer after this.
have
Beautiful. You
fun.
go do that for all of us because it's only 1:45 in the afternoon here. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you again next month.